Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. It's really good to be with you today. Here I'm finishing up. Got one more day after today talking about 1 Samuel chapter 17. And here's the story of David versus Goliath. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because so many of us have Goliaths in our lives. They may not be people, but they're situations, they are obstacles, they are difficulties that you and I have to find a way to overcome, or they will consume us and destroy us. And so this story in 1 Samuel 17 gives some clues as to what to do. We started out by talking about the two different sides and how they were clearly one on one place, one on the other, ready to take each other up. And then we heard about the challenge. The Goliath said to Hebrews, "Come and get me, or I'm going to get you." And then we heard yesterday about how David, this little shepherd boy, goes and visits his brother and asks what's going on and says, how can this guy be allowed to defy God? Well, I'd like to pick up on that thought and ask, how can Goliath, whatever's in your life, be allowed to defy God? So this time, let's look at chapter 17 again, beginning with verse 32. Don't worry about the Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth. But David persisted. I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats. When a lion or bear comes to steal a lamb, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. And if an animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and I club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it again to this pagan Philistine, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Saul finally consented, and he said, all right, go ahead. May the Lord be with you. Saul looks at David for what he can see on the physical outside. A little guy, just a youth. He's not a fighter. He's not a soldier. How can he tackle this giant that's out there? And so David tells him, well, look, I've done these things before. I've tackled this, I've tackled that. I've always come out ahead, and I will come out ahead against this giant. Well, Saul doesn't really have another option because nobody else has volunteered. And in the meantime, the situation is getting worse and worse. The Israelis are getting more and more afraid. And I suspect the Philistines are getting more and more emboldened. But David says, look, the God who has protected me in the past, he will do it now. Saul says, all right, go ahead. The crazy thing here is Saul has everything to lose by letting David fight Goliath. He really doesn't have everything to win because he thinks he can't win. I don't know what would have happened to the army of Israel if David had lost. And Saul's got to wonder that because he doesn't think that David is strong enough and big enough to win. Now, let's think about our lives. You and I have struggles. And those struggles are Goliaths sometimes. There is no way out. They seem over impossible. They're just so overwhelming, and there's no chance things are going to work out. And as long as you look at your Goliath that way, you know what? There isn't any chance. You got to see something different. You got to see that challenge in a different way. if you want to overcome it. David brings to the table a fresh viewpoint. His viewpoint isn't I'm stronger than Goliath, because that's not true. His viewpoint isn't I'm more agile than Goliath. He probably is, but that's not it either. His viewpoint is the God I serve is bigger than Goliath. You see, the God we serve, if we've chosen to walk with him, is bigger than any situation you find yourself in. Well, I know if you keep looking at the situation, you're not going to see it. But just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. I don't see electricity. But when I turn on the light switch over there, the lights come on. I can't see it, but it's there. We can't see God with our physical eyes, but he's there. And David brings the viewpoint that the God I serve can take care of this character. And even more so, what right does he have to defy the armies of God? I'll do it, Saul. By golly, I'll do it, and I'll beat him. And Saul says, okay. He's got no other choice but to let David try. And sometimes in our lives, we have no other choice but to let God try. Now think about that. Think about Saul's perspective. What a dumb perspective. I got nothing else. I might as well try this skinny little kid. He had something else. He had something else all along. The same thing that David had. The conviction that God is bigger than the situation he finds himself in. And that's true for you and me. If you haven't given your life to God and asked him to walk with you, well, there's no better time than right now. And if you've got a big problem, it's a really good time. But beyond that, God wants you and I to grow and to prosper. And whatever Goliath we have in our life doesn't want us to do that. That Goliath really is an enemy of God. Well, that's where I'm going to stop today. Think about your own life. Think about where you are and what's happening. And then think about God. You might see something different. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a really great day. And if you're listening later in the evening, I hope you had a really great day. If you have any needs or concerns, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help you. Thanks for listening. I'll be back tomorrow to finish up this story of David and Goliath in 1 Samuel 17.